Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at NASA's Johnson Space Center as we discuss the upcoming Crew 13 mission to the International Space Station. I'm NASA's Leah Cheshire, and today I am joined by several guests in our room, including Joel Montalbano, the Deputy Associate Administrator for the Human Spaceflight Mission Directorate, Dana Weigel, Manager of the Low Earth Orbit Program, Richard Jones, Deputy Director of the Commercial Crew Office in the Low Earth Orbit Program, Matthew Caron, Director of Astronauts, Life Sciences, and Space Medicine for the Canadian Space Agency, and Juliana Scheiman, Director of NASA Science and Dragon Programs at SpaceX. We're going to have opening remarks from each of our briefers today before we get into a question and answer portion here in the room, on the phone, and at the Canadian Space Agency headquarters in Montreal. Before we go for that, we're going to start with Joel Montalbano.
Hello, and welcome again to today's briefing. It's always good to be here with my NASA colleagues, my Canadian Space Agency colleague, and my SpaceX colleague as we talk about the next human spaceflight mission. You know, every time we do a human spaceflight mission, it gives us an opportunity to strengthen our understanding of low Earth orbit. It gives us an opportunity to broaden our international relationships and an opportunity to showcase to the world that what we can do in low Earth orbit for human spaceflight. You know, as we look at human spaceflight from a directorate standpoint, we recognize the great contributions of Artemis II as we take the lessons learned and we look forward to Artemis III in 2027. The test in low Earth orbit, where we'll be testing at least one, maybe two landers as we look forward to understanding those dynamics and those lessons learned as we prepare to put people on the surface of the moon. With that, I want to thank again my NASA colleagues, Canadian Space Agency, SpaceX, for everything we do, all of our international partners as we look forward to another great human spaceflight. With that, I'll hand it over to Dana Weigel.
Thank you, Joel. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today with us. It's an exciting time for us in the LEO program as we prepare for the Crew 13 mission. I want to start by saying how proud I am of the LEO team. This team combines the talent and the expertise of ISS, commercial crew, commercial LEO destinations, and the EVA office. Every week, critical work happens to keep space station flying safely 24/7. To support a steady cadence of cargo and crew transportation missions, and to shape the future of low Earth orbit with our industry partners. It's been a really busy summer for us. We had the recent successful launch of the 75S Soyuz on July 14th. That mission was carrying NASA astronaut Neil Menon, along with his two Roscosmos crewmates. On July 26th, we had the safe undock and landing of the 74S mission, returning NASA astronaut Chris Williams. This Thursday, we've got a spacewalk planned. Jessica Meir and Neil Menon will go out and install a modification kit on the 3B solar array. That is in preparation for an eventual upgrade to that array. We're installing another one of the IROSA arrays this fall on SpaceX 35. As you heard last week in our spacewalk briefing from Bill Spetch and our operations team, we do have 3 spacewalks planned in August. One of the tasks that we're doing is an R&R of a Node 2 retroreflector. That is critical for visiting vehicles like Crew 13 for navigation, rendezvous, and docking. After that, we're excited to welcome Crew 13 on board station with Jessica Watkins, Luke Delaney, Josh Kutrick of the Canadian Space Agency, and Sergei Tetery-Yatnikov of Roscosmos. 3 of the flyers are first-time flyers, so they'll be the 296th, 97th, and 98 visitors to space station. Not quite at 300, but getting pretty close, which is pretty exciting. During the mission, the crew will help us fight heart disease and Parkinson's disease by studying human stem cell-derived tissues that will help improve medicine, disease modeling, and pharmaceutical testing. They will also explore crop production that's important for longer duration spaceflight missions, and they'll help us better understand blood flow abnormalities that we see in space, along with testing new diagnostic medical equipment for monitoring crew health. That's just a couple of the highlights of some of the exciting research that the crew will be doing on board. Crew 13 will be flying aboard Dragon Grace. This will be the second flight for the spacecraft. It is the newest spacecraft. It last flew on Axiom 4 in 2025. Final integration of the Dragon is complete. The capsule was stacked on the trunk just last week, and mission preparations are proceeding well for a mid-September launch. We are targeting no earlier than September 12th for that mission. Falcon 9 booster maintenance will kick off this month. That same booster was flown on Crew 12. We're not tracking any major issues for this mission campaign. Of course, Richard will talk more about hardware and ground processing along with Juliana. Overall, SpaceX has done a great job getting the spacecraft, the rocket, and all the ground systems ready to support this mission. Looking ahead, we have a number of other missions that we have planned for this year. We have 2 Progress cargo missions. We have a SpaceX 35 Dragon cargo mission that will bring up the last and final set of the IROSA solar arrays, and then we have the Northrop Grumman 25 mission. Teams are really working hard on Starliner. We'd like to get that vehicle back to flight. They've made a handful of hardware modifications, so it's really important for us to fly it as soon as it's ready so we can take a look at the system performance after those modifications have been made. So teams will look at the amount of technical work in front of us, the amount of scope, and all of the other dynamic operations that I mentioned that are ongoing on board Space Station to find the right time to fly that mission. Again, it's a very busy and exciting time in the LEO program. We can't wait to have Jessica, Luke, Josh, and Sergey on board. And with that, I will hand it over to Richard Jones.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Dana. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. From an operations standpoint, everything is on track for a no earlier than September 12th launch. Everything is really doing well. The hardware is in great shape. And as Dana just mentioned, the Dragon spacecraft and its trunk have been mated. There's a few extra things to be done in that area, but that's a major milestone that is going to set us up to complete a Dragon test drive. And that's when the crew will be getting into their ascent entry suits, getting into the vehicle. It's their chance to build some muscle memory, get some familiarity with the vehicle that they're going to be flying to the International Space Station. And so it's just a very big psychological boost. And that test drive will be happening this coming Friday. And again, please ask the crew about that later today. They'll have their own perspectives on that. As Dana also mentioned, the 2-week maintenance period, I want to just say a few extra words with respect to the Falcon 9 booster itself. The maintenance period is a very thorough assessment of the booster. This is the 3rd time that this booster will be flying. This booster flew actually for the first time on Crew 12. And so it flew a Starlink mission, and then again it will be flying for Crew 13. And so detailed inspections and everything that you can imagine about the booster itself, tanks, engines, the aft thermal shield, making sure that we have no indications of hot gas intrusion, welds, bellows, just making sure that there's no limited life-like signatures in the booster itself. A lot of borescope inspections and proof testing, pressure testing. So really looking forward to that maintenance period to start. Stage 2, which is obviously, it doesn't return. It's a first-time flyer. It's making its way through its assembly and its acceptance testing profile. And late, or actually early last week, the MVAC-D engine for that engine underwent a hot fire. They found a minor signature in a gas generator. That gas generator will be removed and replaced. That has happened before. That is not atypical. And so once that that gas generator is replaced, that will be ready for the stage 2 static fire later this week. So everything's on track there. By the time we get ready for agency flight readiness review, we'll be starting to integrate the booster, and it's stage 2. It's getting to be a very exciting time to see all that happen, and a lot of things are going to be happening in a very fast pace from here going forward. I'd like to mention a few of the new things that will be flying for the first time. One of them is an improvement to, and it's called the Mud Flap 2.0 design. The mud flap is a structural panel that is just underneath all of the super Dracos that would be used if an ascent abort were required. The design is being updated from a composite design to a metallic design. It's going to help with structural margins and manufacturability. So that's going to be a really nice change to see come forward. From a pad operations perspective, SpaceX will be moving to a new private rescue capability. If you remember going back to the Crew 12 mission, it was competing a little bit with the Artemis II preparations. And so SpaceX is going to rely on their own team if such a contingency were to come up, that they would have to extract the crew on the pad surface or within the Dragon. That capability they've proved out through a lot of end-to-end testing, a lot of certification. They're ready to go in that area. Really cool thing I ought to mention is that they're using Cybertrucks instead of the MRAP vehicles that have been used in going back many years. Cybertrucks will get them out of that blast danger area quickly in a very good fashion. So looking forward to that improvement. And finally, the R3 suits. The suits themselves have been undergoing a big improvement over many missions now. This is the latest rev of that suit. The suits themselves have been improved to improve donning and doffing capabilities, as well as basically adjustments to account for spinal growth on orbit. So those suits are also first-time flyers for this time around. A quick reminder, the timing of the static fire and dry dress sequence just before launch. If you remember going back to Crew 12, they were separated and put on 2 different days. We're doing the same thing again for Crew 13. And the reason being is that if you even go back to Crew 9, the first time they were flying off at Slick 40, the winds of the day blew back soot from the exhaust that exited the bottom of the vehicle during the static fire, and it deposited on the Dragon. So what is going to happen is that we choose the time of the static fire such that the winds of the day will blow it away from the integrated stack. So that is one of the reasons why we're separating the 2 operations between the static fire and the dry dress operation. So looking forward to another good operation there. Overall, it's been a very clean campaign thus far. We're talking to SpaceX weekly, daily, all the time, and we're not really tracking a lot of issues going forward right now. So looking forward to a very exciting next couple of months. I would like to say I'm very excited for our crew, especially our first-time flyers, and for Jessica Watkins, who will be the first NASA astronaut to fly twice on a Dragon. So hopefully others will be able to have that same bragging right. So thank you for your time here, and let me hand it over to Matthew.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So 2026 so far has been a remarkable year for Canada in space. Of course, everyone's seen Artemis II, the very successful mission with Canadian astronaut Jeremy Henson on board, and really that captured the pride of all Canadians. And now, in the same year, we have another Canadian who's going to go to space. So Canadian astronaut Josh Kutryk will fly to space on his very first mission, but this will be the 4th long-duration mission for a Canadian astronaut to the International Space Station. You'll recall that the last time was David Saint-Jacques, who came back in 2019. I'll just repeat it in French, just to underscore this. Donc, ça sera la première mission de l'astronaute canadien Josh Kutryk, qui va aller sur la Station spatiale internationale. Ça sera la 4e mission de longue durée pour un astronaute de l'Agence spatiale canadienne à bord de la station. So what will Josh be doing? Clearly, he's going to be helping the rest of the crew with the operations of the space station, but he'll also have the opportunity to carry out a number of science experiments, Canadian science experiments, most of which will be focused on human and life sciences, because that has become a niche for Canada. In addition to that, he'll have the opportunity to operate and commission a number of examples of Canadian technology already on board the space station. And of course, if I'm talking about Canadian technology, I can't not mention Canada's main contribution to the International Space Station, namely the mobile servicing system, so that we call affectionately Canadarm2 and Dexter. And these robotics components have played a critical role in the assembly of the ISS. But now that that assembly is complete, it's continued to play an essential role for its operations, maintenance, and resupply. So now, on top of witnessing the Canadian robotics on the space station, we're looking forward to following Josh Kutrick's mission with his crewmates on board the ISS, and actually we're quite confident that he'll be able to showcase Canadian know-how and excellence with the rest of his crewmates. So thank you very much. And now I'll hand it off to Juliana.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here today to talk to all of you about our upcoming Dragon launch to the International Space Station, the Crew 13 mission. As you heard, we are targeting no earlier than September 12th for that mission from Launch Complex 40 in Florida. Like I said, we're really, really excited about the mission, especially excited about launching the crew, Jessica, Luke, Josh, and Sergey. As you heard, Jessica, we love a frequent flyer on Dragon, and very excited to have Jessica fly again on Dragon. And we're also really excited to enable the first spaceflight for Luke, Josh, and Sergey. So pretty excited about that. As you heard from Richard and Dana, things are going really well for preparation, as far as preparations go for this mission. You heard Richard talk about the Dragon test drive, which is this Friday. And in addition to donning their suits and performing seat rotations, leak checks, comm checks, things of the like, the crew also has the opportunity to listen to the sounds of Dragon in space and in flight, so they can understand what it's going to be like when they're flying. So that's a pretty fun opportunity. I'd also encourage you to ask the crew about that. Pretty cool. Richard really covered all of the milestones on the vehicle exceedingly well. So third flight booster, like he said, Crew 12, Starlink mission, and now Crew 13. The Dragon spacecraft itself, processing is going really well. We will transport that Dragon spacecraft to the Launch Complex 40 about a week before launch. So pretty exciting times. At SpaceX, we are really proud to partner with NASA. It takes a lot for the teams and the hardware to be ready to fly, and we're excited about that partnership. Human spaceflight is core to SpaceX's mission, and the top priority of the company is flying these astronauts safely. So we're really proud to partner on that with NASA and the rest of the teams. We're also really proud and excited at SpaceX to enable all of the amazing science that has gone on the International Space Station, and we're super excited to see the forward-looking science that will continue to occur on the International Space Station. So with that, I just want to thank NASA, CSA, Roscosmos, and the entire team. Go Crew 13. Thank you.
Thank you all for those opening remarks. And with that, we're going to move into the question and answer portion of today's briefing. Now, we have some media in the room. As a reminder, if you want to ask a question on the phone, press *1 to raise your hand. If you hear your question asked, please press *2 to lower it. Before we get started, we do have a lot of interest today, so please limit yourself to just one question. We'll start here in the room. Mark.
Mark Carreau with the Aviation Week and Space Technology. I'm going to dial back mentally to April when NASA announced the 4 crew for 13. And at the same time, your announcement said you were moving the launch from November to mid-September at the earliest. And so you announced the planned date today. But there was also notice of trying to increase the launch cadence. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit more. Are you trying to do more missions before the ISS is deorbited, or make more crew flight opportunities, or more research, or some combination?
Great question. It has always been our goal to enable as many missions as we can to stations. So as you're aware, our original plan had missions rotating on a 6-month basis. We made a shift in the agency's plan when we were facing a substantial budget reduction. And because we have to order flights 3 years in advance, you can't just quickly make a change. So you kind of have to do, advanced planning for that. So we made a shift to this 8 to 9 month kind of mission space. And then congressionally, we ended up healthier. And so we're going back. What you're seeing is we're going back to our original plan. It is certainly our goal to give as many people the experience of flying as we can. It's going to serve us well, both for Space Station, but also as we look forward to the rest of our Artemis missions. And so we have pulled back the flight and we are going back to about a 6 to 7 month spacing between all the missions.
Thank you, Dana. We'll stay here in the room.
Hi, Elizabeth Howell from Canadian Geographic, and this might be for Mathieu, it might be for Dana or one of the U.S. managers, but essentially I did a bit of math, which is kind of dangerous, and I went, okay, we had Chris flying in 2012, and we had David flying in 2018, and then we had Josh assigned for a 2024 mission, and so 6 years would be 2030. Notwithstanding what Dana just said, is there a plan to get another Canadian astronaut on the space station around 2030 before? Has this been discussed? I realize that's a bunch of questions, so what do you have to say?
Well, we're working very closely with NASA and the rest of the partners to identify additional possibilities for our Canadian astronauts. That's something that's very important to us. And clearly, a lot of pieces are moving, and we're working very closely to identify possibilities. And we're happy that we have such strong relationships to be able to have those discussions.
Thank you. Next question in the room.
Hi, Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thank you all for taking the time with us today. Question for Juliana, if I may. This is the second flight for Dragon Grace, but the Dragon fleet in total is starting to, get up to close to the double digits in flights, around 4 or 5 for most of them. As you look towards the end of the space station and the partnership that SpaceX has with some of these commercial stations, I wonder how you're starting to prepare the Dragon fleet to get up to those higher-ended mission numbers, your 9, 10, 11, and what the future of the Dragon program kind of looks like at this point. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Some stats actually about the Crew 13 mission. So this is our 18th human spaceflight mission and our 53rd mission, Dragon, to the International Space Station. So that's some good numbers for you to kind of base your question around. We take, actually across Dragon and Falcon, we take a robust qualification approach to look at reuse. We look at the system as a whole, we look at subsystems and assess, each component reaches its qualification. Does it need to be removed and replaced between flights? How many number of flights? And how, and we basically track life at the component level and at the system level, again, on Falcon and on Dragon. And so that's something, especially for the NASA missions, we work in partnership with NASA. The NASA teams review all of our design life, all of our qualified life, and ensure that we're operating within the vehicle qualification and we're operating safely. I see a significant amount of life remaining on our Dragon fleet. We do some of that math between NASA and SpaceX and see many more flights available on the hardware itself.
Okay, our next question here, Miles.
Hi, Miles Dorn with CBS News. Question for Dana, maybe. Can you give us a status update on the leak in the Russian section and the path forward with Roscosmos in determining the root cause and any future repair work? And then quickly for Juliana, a lot of people are talking about this Falcon 9 second stage that is predicted to hit the moon this week. Scientists are excited about the opportunity to try to observe it, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how it ended up there and what the company thinks about this. Thanks.
All right, I will hit your question first on the leak. If you recall, back in April-May timeframe, Roscosmos found an additional leak inside the Paraca. They went inside, and what they did was what's called a temporary repair. They had started into something a little more permanent and then ended up changing the position, so they used patches and kind of temporary fixes with that. It actually sealed the leak. So right now there is no ongoing leak with it. Hatch is closed. It is back at lower pressure as they're assessing what the forward plans are. So there's no current active ongoing leak with the patches they've put in it.
Okay, and about the second stage you asked about. So for those who don't know, a little bit of context, the mission he's talking about was the iSpace Hakuto and the Firefly Blue Ghost mission that we launched. As you all see on the webcast, the first stage returns to Earth, but the second stage we need to appropriately dispose of. So for low Earth orbit missions, we nominally would perform a burn or a maneuver to demise the second stage to appropriately deorbit that stage. But for high energy missions, we need to perform a different maneuver to ensure the second stage itself is safe per the appropriate rules and regulations. And so we did that here for the iSpace and Blue Ghost mission, that second stage. And what has happened is essentially a mixture of solar activity and gravity forces have put it on a path towards the moon. As a scientist, I also am very excited to see the observation. But yes, it's one of the things that we're working in partnership with NASA and the other appropriate agencies is what is the best future disposal path for high energy missions that are in the Sun, Earth, Moon system. And so, yeah, we're pretty excited about it. I know a lot of the teams are going to go observe the disposal, so pretty exciting.
All right, thank you both. Now, before we go back to questions here in the room or on the phone bridge, we do have some members of the media at the Canadian Space Agency headquarters in Montreal. So to answer some of their questions, I'm going to toss it over to Fred Fink with CSA.
Oui, bonjour, Jean-Philippe Hughes pour Radio-Canada. Ma question est pour Mathieu Caron. Pouvez-vous nous expliquer en français, en fait, c'est quoi les nouveautés de la version Crew 13 en matière d'équipements qui vont être utilisés, de robots, combinaisons, et quel genre d'entretien l'équipement, c'est-à-dire l'équipage, fera sur place?
I'll answer the question in French first and reiterate in English afterwards. Alors donc, la mission de Josh portera principalement sur évidemment, le maintien et l'entretien de la station spatiale, donc les activités de routine pour s'assurer du bon fonctionnement de la station spatiale. Donc, Josh est pleinement qualifié en robotique et pour les sorties extravéhiculaires, mais également des sciences, des expériences scientifiques qui portent sur les sciences de la vie. Donc là, on a toute une série de nouvelles expériences, justement, qui regardent les effets de l'environnement spatial sur le système cardiovasculaire, sur les os, sur les muscles, sur la capacité des astronautes de s'orienter et sur la santé mentale. Donc, une foule d'expériences qui va nous faire plaisir de vous partager tout au long de la mission. Alors, regardez, il va y avoir de la robotique également et potentiellement des sorties extravéhiculaires. So the answer, just to summarize, basically, it was the question was what was Josh going to be doing on board the International Space Station? So I gave a quick synopsis to try to summarize 6 months worth of activities, basically science, operations, maintenance, robotics, spacewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. We're now going to go to the phone bridge. So again, if you'd like to ask a question, press *1 to raise your hand. If you hear your question has been asked, *2 to lower it. Please limit yourself to one question as we do have a lot of interest, and make sure to state who you are representing and to whom your question is directed. We'll start with Jonathan Seri.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. This question is for anyone with NASA who can talk about ISS retirement plans. If you could give us a status update, are we still looking at 2030 as a firm out, or are all options on the table as far as extending the life until a commercial replacement is firmly in place? Thanks.
I can take that. We are still working towards the plan to retire the ISS at the end of 2030. Of course, actually deorbiting ISS takes about 2 years to do in total, and so that's something that we're going to pot and put in place to be ready for that. At the same time, from a technical standpoint, the spacecraft is doing fine. There's a lot more structural capability in the spacecraft, and so if from a legislative standpoint we're directed otherwise, we will be ready to support and pivot.
Okay, our next question comes from Jackie Waddles.
Joanna, thanks so much for doing this. I had a quick follow-up question about the leak repairs. I was just curious, could you guys give any specifics on the timeline of those repairs and how it was made? I guess I'm just curious because I know the last time this subject was visited in June, there was concern about the method that the cosmonauts might use to try to enact those repairs. Just kind of wanted to know how that all settled. And then if I can really quickly, I wanted to ask Dana, regarding, ISS retirement and the commercial LEO program. I remember from the Ignition Day presentation, you had concerns about how much a commercial market there was for these LEO destinations, hence that plan to shift to a new core module plan. But now it looks like it's shifted back to the original CLD plan. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that and whether your mind has changed about the commercial market. Thanks so much.
Okay, let me answer your leak repair question first. The week that Roscosmos, so the cosmonauts, were inside working on the PRK, They had initially thought they would go into what they would consider a permanent structural repair, which would have involved trying to remove a bracket and kind of doing a stop drilling and patching technique. That's something they have done before in a different location. Teams hadn't really worked through all the details with that, and so they stood down from that, and instead what they did, what I called a temporary patch before, is it's kind of an adhesive type patch, so it's different than the sealant material they use. So they put that down. That is isolating it from the environment. It is patching it. It's not as structural as their other patch. So that's that week that they were in, that's what they ended up defaulting to, just to stand down to allow teams more time to discuss it. In terms of CLD, we've had a lot of discussion and outreach with CLD industry. You mentioned Ignition Day. We kind of talked about what some of the agency's concerns were in terms of markets that were out there. We sought a lot of feedback and discussion from industry. Industry expressed their confidence in the original CLD plan, moving out straight directly into a commercial solution. They felt confident in the investments and that we'd continue to see growth in the market. And so we heavily weighted our decision based on industry's confidence and feedback. So you saw us pivot to what I'll call the original plan that we had been following to go straight into services with a commercial destination. We released a draft RFP, and we're actually in the process of looking at all the feedback that comes back from industry as part of the normal part of that process. We'll turn that around, and then we'll get a final RFP out on the streets as soon as we can.
All right, our next question on the phone is from Marcia Dunn.
Yes, hi. For Joel, please. Joel, I'm wondering how much liability or threat do these pop-up start and stop pressure leaks pose to keeping the station going until 2030, let alone longer? What are some of the other vulnerable parts of the space station that could pose a problem to keep the station running for the next few years? Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. Right now, I would tell you we're not tracking any major systems. Dana and the LEO program continues to manage the ISS systems extremely well. When there's repairs, the team takes a look at, what do we have on orbit? What do we have on the ground? What do we need to be working on? In fact, one of the upcoming spacewalks is going to address some of the repairs. Maybe you can say a couple words on that.
Yeah, I would just as a reminder, I think we've talked with the media about this before, but the vast majority of the systems on ISS are replaceable, and so they're on-orbit replaceable units. So we do R&Rs when we have degrading or failed equipment, and so from a system standpoint, we have sufficient sparing and logistics, and that's an ongoing cycle to make sure we can support stations. So just as a reminder, when we talk about limited life items on space station, it's really the primary structure that we're looking at. And so the work that we've done on the NASA side, we've got a lot of margin in our primary structure. We've talked about Paracab before, and that the Russians are looking closely at that. That's the number one structural item that we look at. But from a system standpoint, replacing parts, and from the rest of the structures, we're in great shape. We're not tracking any issues.
We have another question at the Canadian Space Agency, so let's take it back to Montreal.
Hello, Trevor, Trelene, Plateau Astro. This is a question about Joshua. His family is going to be welcoming their third child while he's in space, and I think this is only the third time that an astronaut has been in space while their spouse is giving birth on Earth. Are there any sort of special procedures or accommodations that are made for moments like that? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. I was going to joke about parental leave, but actually we have a team at the Canadian Space Agency of a medical team dedicated to ensuring that the family would get the appropriate support to help help Josh, worry about things on board. Clearly, he's going to think about what's going on the ground as well. But we were going to assist the family. I know we talk about family, but even on the ground here at NASA, there's a whole family community that can support Josh's family, and you can rest assured that his family will be well taken care of.
We'll go back to the phone bridge, and our next question is from Eric Berger.
Hi, thank you very much. A question for Joel, I think, about the workforce conversion. I think we're a couple months into the initiative now, and I understand there have been a few thousand contractors that have been brought back to NASA. Just curious from an operations standpoint, running ISS and crew programs and so forth, how is this going in terms of safety and efficiency? Has this been a good thing for the agency from your perspective?
I continue to be excited about it. This initiative that Administrator Isaacman has asked us to do I've only seen positive impacts from it. You see, the administrator had asked us to focus at the Johnson Space Center on the mission control and converting folks from a mission control standpoint. It's been seamless for the team. Before, when you work in mission control, you really couldn't tell if you were working with a civil servant or a contractor. Today, this transition continues that. And so I'm excited to see it. We're seeing it across the multiple centers of the agency. And so we look forward to continuing this effort.
Our next question on the phone is with Jeff Faust.
Hi, Jeff Faust of Space News. Question for Dana or Joel. Curious what the status is of the seat barter agreement with Roscosmos. We heard some reports last month that there had been an agreement, at least in principle, to extend that. How long has that been extended, and does that include Starliner missions once Starliner is certified for long-duration ISS trips? Thanks.
I'm not sure I have the specific dates by memory. Let me tell you about how we do it. So we tend to work just a period of time in front of us, about a year and a half. So we work on a shorter horizon with all our agreements. So we are covered for a number of missions with the exchanges. We have not finished the work on Starliner. What they're waiting to see is the rest of our flight and certification data. They want to talk about it, but they'd like to see that data before we go into it. We can get you the specifics of what specific missions are covered in the exchange. I just don't remember that off the top of my head.
We'll come back to a question here in the room with Will.
Hi, thanks for allowing a second question. For Dana as well, going back to your opening remarks, Starliner comments, is the constraint to fly at this point more on the technical side and having a full understanding of the changes that have been made, or is it more of slotting into the ISS schedule given all of the coming and going both vehicle and cargo missions on the docket for this year? Thank you.
It's a little bit of both. On the technical side, Boeing has done a great job making thermal modifications to the spacecraft. So I think we've shared before, but some of the warmer temperatures that the propulsion system saw were part of the issue. And so they've done a lot of things with thermal barriers and thermal shunts to the spacecraft. So when you make that type of modification, then you got to go back and kind of look at the integrated system and say, okay, how do I expect it to perform with those modifications? So that's some of the work that's still being closed out. Separately, we have a pretty busy launch schedule. We only have 2 docking ports, and we have a lot of other constraints on board, like we have beta cutouts when we can't do dockings. And so we've got to line up that body of technical work we need to complete with openings that we have on station. So that's something that we'll continue to look at as we get better resolution on the overall schedule to finish the technical work.
Another question here in the room.
Hi, Elizabeth from Canadian Geographic again from Machias. So do you mind bringing me up to speed on how the replacement parts are doing for Canadarm2? Because we just had that refurbishment. I'm hoping it's working okay, but please give us an update on how all that's going and then where everything else is standing. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Elizabeth. So since the replacement spacewalk, which I believe was on June 30th, the Canadarm2 has been returned to regular operations. Now, clearly, because of the importance of robotics on the ISS, it's the performance of that replaced joint, but also of the rest of the mobile servicing system is being looked at very, very carefully, and that was always the case. So, in terms of, and the plan would be to eventually refurbish the replaced joint, and so that it would become the next, spare part. You'll recall that our very first experience at that replacing a joint was in 2002, in June 2002. So, and that proved to be very successful. So that strategy of having spare parts and refurbishments has allowed us to essentially operate the Canadarm2 for more than 25 years now. Thank you.
We'll go back to the phone bridge and this question from Joey Roulette.
For Juliana, I was just wondering, for how long will Dragon continue to operate before retiring or before Starship replaces it? And then for Dana, what is the CLD program and NASA overall kind of doing to prepare for that day in which, the only U.S. crew-capable LEO spacecraft goes out of service? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So as you heard me say in my opening remarks, Dragon is an incredibly important part of the human spaceflight for the country, and we at SpaceX are incredibly proud to support human spaceflight. We anticipate Dragon supporting ISS for years to come, and it's no secret that we're also developing our Starship vehicle. I personally am really excited about the Starship vehicle enabling, hundreds of people to be launching to space, low Earth orbit, and beyond. And so I want to live in that universe where we're launching regularly, repeatedly to LEO and beyond. And so, we're working in partnership with NASA to ensure that we're continuing to support the NASA mission and while developing Starship at the same time.
So a couple thoughts to answer the second part of your question. The first is, I think you're all aware it had always been part of the agency's plan to have two different commercial crew providers. And so we're committed to that. And so we're still working with Starliner to get Starliner certified to fly missions. The other thing, just a little more insight into this procurement that we're doing for the commercial LEO destinations. The ultimate plan with the destinations is to have what we call an end-to-end service, which means I can buy my crewed flights to go to the destination, so they're coupled together. So the transportation side and the destination side are tied together in an end-to-end service. And so commercial industry, the destination providers specifically, are working directly with transportation providers and deciding who they're partnering with, what works best based on their architectures and their designs. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that in the proposals and their responses back to us.
We'll come back to the room for another question from Mark.
Oh, thank you, Mark Carreau, Aviation Week in Space Technology. And if you already answered this, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure from NASA's perspective, how long does the launch seat exchange agreement with Russia extend at this point? Does it go all the way to the end of the station, or is there a year period where it stops?
We don't do it in long duration increments. We tend to do it in year and a half out. And so that's been our ongoing process with the Russians. It is our intention to continue it. We still have discussions that we need to have with them about Starliner certification and sharing that data. So just as a normal practice, we do share with partners very high level kind of certification and where we are. And so we're not at the point yet where we can have those discussions about Starliner. So what we've been doing is having the discussion specifically about the Dragon SpaceX vehicles and continuing all of those exchanges, but we will have that as part of the forward work and forward discussions with Roscosmos.
Thanks, Mark. We'll be sure to follow up with you and Jeff on that topic.
Yeah, we can give you the specific dates. I just don't want to try to do it from memory at this time, but we'll get that to you.
We will stay back to the phone bridge now with Bill Harwood.
Hey, thanks a lot. One more question for Dana about the leak. You said the hatch is closed. I'm assuming there's lower pressure in the module right now, which would help with maintaining a zero or a very low leak rate. Do you know if the Russians are still planning to do the permanent structural repair? And if so, would you still put the USOS crew in their Dragon while that's going on? Or was that just because you guys didn't fully understand what they were up to, when they were first trying to do it? So really just trying to understand if they're still planning that repair, and will you be fully on board with it? Thanks.
Sure, a couple things. So the PRCOS maintained around 250 millimeters mercury of pressure. And so there is some small amount of pressure on it. It's kept low just to protect the equipment that they have in there. And so we can actually see and confirm that it's not currently leaking with these temporary patches. Roscosmos is still evaluating what they think the best plan is for the structure overall. If they go and do a permanent repair, I expect them to share the methodologies with us, and we'll take a look at what that permanent repair looks like, and then we'll decide on our side what actions we'll take or what we think the right mitigations are. So that's still work in front of us as they're trying to figure out what they want to do longer term with that part of the structure.
Our next question is from Richard Trudeau.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. It's Richard Trudeau with the Orlando Sentinel. This is for Dana and Richard. Is 2026 launch for Starliner's uncrewed flight still possible, or is it the window's going to have to push it to 2027? And as far as astronaut involvement, with reassignments and retirements, how many of the astronaut corps are still involved with Starliner, and to what degree? Like, at what point would you have to assign them training for a first crewed flight? A year or more? That's it. Thank you.
I'll take the first part, and then I'll hand it to Richard. There's still opportunities to launch in 26. We're going to make sure that we've laid in all the right technical work and that we use that to drive the schedule. But in terms of a space station flight plan and windows where I've got an open docking port, I've still got capability to fly Starliner in this year. From a crew office standpoint, we always have astronauts that follow any of our major developments, and we do have crew members who are following Starliner development, and I don't know that I know off the top of my head how far out we have to assign crew for crewed flight, so I'll see if Richard has more on that one.
Yeah, no, I can add a little bit. It's a structured contractual problem in terms of when astronauts have to be assigned, and it's different from the given provider. But roughly, you're looking about a year, a little bit more than a year. I'm going to keep it a little bit generic with respect to making sure that an assignment is in place. And just going back to what Dana was talking about, in terms of being ready for a Starliner mission, we're making a lot of progress in that area, understanding the anomalies that have been in place, and we're just making a lot of really good progress there. So we do have a lot of astronauts following every step of the way, right? They are following every single decision, assessment that are being done in that area, and so whenever that time comes for a crewed assignment, NASA will be ready to tell the public about who it is and why.
Next question is from Ryan Caton.
Hey, thanks for your time. I'm just wanting a little clarification on, I think I heard earlier that the MRAP vehicles have been replaced with Tesla Cybertrucks. I was just wondering if there's any kind of explanation as to why that was done, or if there's an advantage that the Cybertruck offers over the military vehicles. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one. The advantage clearly is the speed, right? There is the speed at which a Cybertruck can exit the blast danger area is definitely one of the reasons why SpaceX has chosen to go in that direction. But I think really the main thing that I want to iterate is that it decouples a conflict in terms of trying to compete for the same resources for an MRAP. For the personnel associated with those operations. So SpaceX is just going in a direction that they have freedom to manage those resources. And if Juliana needs to add anything,
no, you can.
I think she agrees with me.
Our next question is from Micah Maidenberg.
Hey, sorry about that. Just a quick question for Juliana. Is SpaceX still actively selling non-NASA human space flights on Crew Dragon? Thanks a lot.
Yes, I thank you for the question. And I realize actually one of the things I forgot to mention when I answered a similar question previously is we have an amazing set of missions coming up on Falcon and Dragon that I am especially excited about. We have the Roman Space Telescope mission coming up here shortly. We have a plethora of missions that we're supporting and on contract for, to include missions to support the private astronaut missions, both those that go into the International Space Station, as well as those to a vast private space station. So we have a plethora of missions that we are on contract for and very much supporting in the years to come. And so, yeah, we anticipate supporting those, especially the missions we are currently actively working.
Next question comes from Robert Perlman.
Hi, just returning for Richard and Juliana, just returning quickly to the handover of crew pad rescue operations. Did the Cybertrucks need to be modified in any way to meet the same capabilities as the MRAPs? And is there a handoff to a point where you hand it off to a Kennedy Space Center or Space Force Station team, or would the crew be taken directly to a SpaceX facility, and if so, where?
Yeah, Robert, thanks for that question. First of all, the modifications, I'm not aware of any modifications. There were a lot of certification that had to go into making sure that those Cybertrucks would start up with a gloved hand. There were a lot of tests in terms of making sure you could egress the vehicle with a bulky suit on. All of those things were proven to be already intact, and they're going to configure those Cybertrucks to be ready to receive those vehicles. So really, everything is in place there. And Juliana, if you want to add anything else.
No, I think you covered it. It also looks really cool.
Our next question is from TJ Mascaro.
Hi, thank you so much. Again, another question about the private rescue capabilities. How long has that certification process been in the works? Is this just in direct response to the possible Crew 12 Artemis II overlap, or was this next level of apparent operational autonomy already in development before that?
Do you want me to take that one? Yeah, so we obviously support NASA missions to the International Space Station with Crew. We also support private astronaut missions, both to the International Space Station as well as free flyers. And so one of the things that we, as a human spaceflight provider, need to do is make sure that we have consistent, reliable capability for the full suite of our missions. So this is, this is a capability that we have been developing for private missions as well as for NASA missions. And I think this most recent conflict sort of put us in the position where it made the most sense to roll it out across all our missions.
Our next question is from Ivan Pilishchikov.
Hello. Ivan Pilishchikov, Test News Agency. Thank you very much. I have a question to Joel Montalbano and Dana Weigel. Will Roscosmos representatives or any Russian representatives be present at Crew 13 mission launches in September? And are there perhaps any plans for Russian representatives to attend any NASA launch to ISS in near future? Thank you so much.
You want to start? I can start. So as a standard practice, we invite each other's colleagues to the different launches. Right now, there's a progress launch in Baikonur, very close to the Crew 12 launch. And so while we'll have some Roscosmos representation, we won't have the normal that we normally do because many of the Russian management will be in Baikonur for the progress launch.
Our next question is from David Curley.
Thank you very much. I guess it's Dana, possibly Joel. You talked about the changes that Boeing's made. Can you get specific as what they've done for the heat? Are these structures? Is it insulation? What's going on there? And Juliana, I think Anil Menon is the first SpaceX employee who's become a NASA astronaut to go into space. Can you talk about that a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that first part of the question. With respect to the changes that have been made, they have focused a lot on the SMRCS system, and the changes that they have done, they've implemented basically some thermal shunts, some structural members that divert the heat from the thrusters and put it somewhere else. So that's one of the other things that they're trying to implement in terms of fixing the overall problem. Let me address some other items that they've done. They've introduced some basically insulation. They've added some insulation on different parts of the thruster itself. But these changes have proven themselves in the White Sands ground testing. They have looked at those improvements and have definitely shown that the thermal improvements have taken shape in a planned form.
Yes, and the question about SpaceX employees going to space, I would actually like to note that Anna Menon and Sarah Gillis were the first SpaceX employees to go to space on the Polaris Dawn mission. Anna being married to Anil and went to space first, not that we're counting. And everyone at SpaceX was super excited to see Anil launch. We had a little viewing, watching him launch, and we're all rooting for him and Anna, who's now in the astronaut corps as well.
Our next question comes from Manuel Mazzanti.
Thank you so much. Manuel Mazzanti with Exploración Espacial. A question for Dana. Can you
share with us some of the latest information regarding the Axiom suits? We know, they shared some information that they're still actively testing the suits with NASA. Is still the plan to take one of the suits to the Artemis 3 mission or to the space station to do an EVA, or both? Thank you.
We are actively discussing the option to take a suit and test it on board station. We're looking at probably one Axiom suit and then one of the EMUs together. So what we'd like to do is see what we can learn from it. You always want to test as early as you can, and so the plan right now is to try to do that in 2027. And I don't know if Artemis is still also tracking a test.
I'll have to get back to you on the Artemis question.
All right, we'll come back for another question in the room here with Miles.
Quick question on the privatization of the rescue capability. For downrange rescue, are you still using the Department of Defense and DET-3 for that? And any discussion about that perhaps someday going private as well with the commercial crew missions, because there seemed to be some concern about that with Artemis 2. Thanks.
Yes, we are still using our Department of War personnel to be ready to rescue a crew that ends up, if an accident abort were to occur, or even an on-orbit contingency, they will be in place to rescue the crew within the specifications that we've asked them to meet. Yes, to answer your question, are we considering privatization in that area? That has been an ongoing discussion in terms of moving in that direction. And that would be downrange from now in terms of time. We haven't settled on things, but we are discussing it.
We have another question on the phone from Joey Roulette.
Hey, thank you. Another one for Juliana. You had mentioned that you're excited for Starship's potential in space, including low Earth orbit. And I was just wondering what the potential for Starship in LEO is and how that kind of matches with your idea of when Crew Dragon might retire. And if you could just kind of go into that a little bit, that'd be nice. Thank you.
Sure. So yes, I mentioned Starship, and again, to just set the stage right, I already got a question about the second stage disposal. The reason Starship is an amazing vehicle is when you have a fully reusable vehicle, your mission cost and your operational cost and your reliability can increase. Your costs go down, your reliability increases. So again, really excited about Starship. I think an interesting upcoming Starship LEO mission is the Artemis 3 mission, where the Starship HLS lander will be operating in low Earth orbit. And I think that's a really good example of something where we're using it as a proving ground as we continue to develop Starship's capabilities. We do anticipate flying Dragon and Starship at the same time. That's what you're seeing today, right now. We're flying Dragon to the International Space Station and for private astronaut missions while we're developing the Starship capability. So we see those operating in the same time as we continue to develop and make improvements on Starship. Yeah, thank you.
We have time for one last question here in the room. Bill.
Hi, thanks for one more. Question to Juliana and to Dana, I think. Crew 11's Mike Fink flew an updated IVA suit, and I believe all the members of Crew 12 did as well. Can you give us an update on how those suits performed, and are there any future changes planned to the flight suits for the remaining commercial crew missions? And what is the time of launch on the 12th and the backup on the 13th? Thanks.
Go ahead. Sure. I'm going to pull up the exact time of launch so I don't say the wrong time, because I know if I say it. Yeah, so currently, obviously, as we track the station, the times will wiggle a little bit, but we're looking at around 6:30 on September 12th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, I think just again to step back about suits. One of the things that at SpaceX we're really proud to be able to support is human space flight for NASA and human space flight for private citizens, for private industry. And obviously, when you're doing that, you need to be in a position to be making consistent improvements to your suit and creating additional capabilities on your suit. So I just want to say that I think we're really excited about our suit, the R3 suits that we're flying in this upcoming mission, continuing to learn from that and make improvements as we need as we go forward. I don't know if there's anything you'd want to add.
No, Juliana, you hit it.
Okay, great.
And that's all we have time for here today in our Crew 13 mission overview briefing. But you can hear from the crew themselves, Jessica Watkins, Luke Delaney, Joshua Kutryk, and Sergei Tetriotnikov at 1 p.m. Central right here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.